Hello, everybody. Thank you all so very much for joining us on this lovely Tuesday evening. I'm here with CARA McGEE, who you see over on the right there. So CARA is probably most well known for her work on the Over the Garden Wall comic, and then also Black Canary, the DC one that came out not too long ago.
Right before pandemic.
Right before pandemic, among other things. And David Petersen, who you'll probably know from Mouse Guard, as well as doing lots of covers for different projects, including Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Usagi Yojimbo, and a variety of other things. So, and then I'm Chris Schweitzer, and you probably know me from having posted the link to this. So thank you all so very much for you two. Thank you for joining us, and then everybody who is here, thank you for joining us as well.
Yeah.
And so the reason I thought this might be a good topic with you guys is that you both approach convention tabling differently, and I was curious as to sort of what, if each of you, we'll start with David, can kind of give me a sense as to what your, for lack of a better word, primary motivations are for your average comic convention table. What are you hoping to get out of it? What are you hoping to do with it, to give a context for the audience there?
It's definitely, I mean, it's changed over the years, but and it also depends on which convention I'm going to, for how much space I feel is warranted, how much I can afford or is allowable at a convention, or what I know the sales of a convention can justify in expense. But in general, my convention presence is about informing an audience that myself and Mouse Guard exist. So there's a little bit of peacocking. There's a little bit of putting out that big tail, not because I'm actually that big, but because I want everybody to notice me, and notice Mouse Guard and notice what I do. And then the other part is sales. I am trying to move merchandise. I'm trying to sell books. I'm trying to sell, sometimes it's merchandise like Mouse Guard t-shirts or board games or role-playing games. That kind of stuff can vary about what product I take to what conventions, but there's definitely like a move product. There's a lot of different kinds of product types for Mouse Guard, and I need to make sure that people are aware. So that goes into the informing thing too. Even if you're already aware of who I am or what Mouse Guard is, you might not know that we have an alphabet book, or you might not know that sometimes we do t-shirts, or that sometimes we do other products. So making sure that we have all that stuff easily displayed so people can see it. All the prices are easy to read. Moves merchandise and informs people about what I'm up to.
Yeah, like David pretty much nailed it. When you're tabling, you want people to notice your table. You want to get people's attention, whether it be because they're already fans of your work. You want to put out stuff that people might already recognize, and they'll stop and go, oh, I've seen that in shops, and let's see what this is about. Or if, something flashy that people are like, oh, I don't know what this is, but I want to learn more about it. So you got to find that balance and like between your current fans and trying to get new fans. And you do that with good looking displays and different products. And it's a ever evolving process, honestly. Like I've been tabling at conventions since I was in high school. So like 20 years now. And it's changed so much in those 20 years, like what I've done as far as tabling goes. So
that's a really interesting thing, and it's something I wanted to ask you about, Car, because I think that there tend to be a couple of different ways that folks approach conventioning, and one is that you are a working professional and you are there to promote the things that you're working on. Another is that you start out tabling first and doing prints and fan art and zines and mini comics and things like that. And the tabling precedes a professional career, and that's sort of the way that you came in.
Yeah, I came in from a very I did anime cons for years and years until I was at SCAD and I started doing Heroes Con. That was my first comic book convention. And it's interesting the way I had to approach doing a comic convention as opposed to anime convention, because I think at anime conventions it isn't professional artists who have tables. It's fan artists and popular online artists and stuff. That's who you'll see at anime conventions, and they do great. Like, in their table displays are completely different setup. I think over the last few years you see a lot more overlap. More comic conventions are allowing more non-professional artists come in and have tables. So it's interesting to see how that's kind of starting to shift. But yeah, it's definitely a learning curve.
Now, is that your original audience was very much that anime convention audience? Was it did you struggle sort of shifting from one to the other, or was it sort of an organic process?
Yes and no. It was interesting because when I started doing Heroes and other comic conventions, I was still not quite working professionally yet. Like, I was starting to make contacts in American publishing, but I've only really been professionally published in the US like the last 6 or 7 years or so. So when I started doing comic conventions, I was getting a lot of like, I don't think other people who were tabling really knew what to do with me. Like, I didn't really fit in with a lot of other people tabling because I wasn't drawing superhero books or indie books or anything like that. I was just, they were like my anime fan art. And so that was kind of weird. But then at the same time, I would have these really long lines at my table of people who were excited to see me, either because they'd seen my stuff online or because my stuff was so different than everything else at the convention. So I was getting a lot of attention for that reason. And that really worked to my advantage.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do y'all pick the conventions that you do? Is like number of attendees a thing? Is it word of mouth from other artists who are telling you about it? Is it whether or not you're invited? Like, what are some factors that either demand that you go or preclude your going? Or are there factors? Is it always on a case-by-case basis?
I used to do a lot more. I used to be more open to if word of mouth. It's all of those reasons, Chris. It's, all of those things can play a factor. Other professionals that saying this is a really good show, you should do it. Shows reaching out and saying we want to invite you. Finding out that there's this huge convention somewhere, even if you've never heard anything about it, you're like, well, I'll try that. And I used to do a lot more of the big random stuff, and I just got burned out. I could not do. I know there are some people who are like, they live in a van practically, and they are just going from convention to convention throughout the year, and they kind of tour all over the country, and that's how they earn their keep, and they enjoy that nomad life. I got so disoriented when I'd land back at home and go, what the hell? What was I doing? What was I supposed to be working on? So I cut way back, and I made a list of conventions that I felt like I couldn't live without. And some of that had to do with size, and some of that also had to do with region. I wanted to try to make sure that I was hitting major regions of the country. So like Chicago being kind of my Midwestern show. Heroes was about as far to the southeast as I got. San Diego was West Coast. Seattle was northern West Coast. New York. But it was trying to kind of spread out so that no matter where you lived in the U.S., I was going to come regionally close to you.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to do it. And I tried to do that. I know pre-pandemic, 2018, 2019, I was at the point where I was doing at least one show a month, just traveling around. And it worked for me because my work schedule wasn't super demanding at that time. And I live pretty remotely, so it worked great for me because I live alone in the woods, and then I would go off into a big city once a month and like see lots of people, and then come back to my quiet house. So that was great. But now coming out of the pandemic a little bit more, I think that's going to change a lot. I did, I think, like 3 or 4 shows last year, and even that was just exhausting. So I think in the future, I'm going to be a lot choosier about what shows I do. Obviously, there's the shows that I just really love at this point because of the people that are either there or that run them, like Emerald City and Heroes Con and all of that. But like, and I haven't done an anime show in so long, just because I feel like my audience has moved beyond that. And like I said earlier, anime shows feel more like a place for people who are trying to establish themselves as artists, and I would rather those table spaces go to those up and coming artists rather than shelling out to go to like Otakon or something like that.
Yeah.
Heroes was one of those Heroes was one of those conventions where for a long time, if we just looked at the bottom line numbers, it didn't make sense for me. I just wasn't making the kind of income at Heroes that made sense. And so just from a bean counter kind of methodology, it was on the chopping block at one point of like, well, maybe you don't do Heroes next year. And I just kept advocating for it because I was like, there is more than just the cash or the, the sales. Like there are other things that need to be factored into what shows I do and which ones I don't. And so I insisted on continuing to go back to Heroes every year because it brought me more. There was an artist camaraderie kind of a thing. There was it was like a family reunion. It got me to a certain region. I knew that there were fans who like did not get to the other conventions who would only be seeing me at Heroes. There was the art auction. There were just all these things about Heroes that weren't happening anywhere else. So it doesn't always have to be about just the dollars or the region. Like there are other factors.
Heroes is definitely like my least profitable con, but it holds such a strong place in my heart because, again, it was the first comic convention I did. That's where I made a lot of my friendships in the comics industry. And it feels like you're saying the sense of camaraderie there is so strong. It feels like, I can't remember who said this, but a couple years ago, somebody described it to me as like comic summer camp, almost like comic artist summer camp. I'm like, yes. That's it exactly. It feels like going to camp to see all of my friends.
And yeah, here's is one. It's another one that like it's not my it's the least profitable show that I would be doing if my friend Kyle didn't force me to do a couple of other shows as well. So I do 1 or 2 more shows per year than I otherwise would because he kind of strong arms me into it. And they're close enough that, I make money out of, I'm not losing money out of them. Right. I make a little bit. It's kind of local, but it's for the amount of time, like I do so much convention prep in terms of making sure that I have my prints, getting my stuff together, things like that, that it really, in addition to the time spent traveling to the convention and setting up and being at the convention, I've got to kind of have a day on either side. And so it really has to, and there's so much that I want to be doing at home work-wise that it really has to be a pretty substantial return for me to want to do those shows. So I tend to only do like, my ideal would be about 4 or 5 shows a year. And then I think I'm doing 6 this year, which is 1 more than I feel comfortable with. But David, you mentioned like hitting the different areas. Well,
I also can I for a minute talk about something about Heroes?
Yeah,
is that once I realized that it wasn't necessarily financially my best, and I knew that I was going to come back to it, even though that was the case, I then used it as a puzzle. I was like, there is something to be solved here. Different conventions are different. Sometimes getting materials to that convention, to your table, or the amount of space you have it's all different. There's different logistics problems for what's gonna sell well at that convention. Like Heroes is an art convention. It's not a book convention.
Yeah.
So me spending a lot of time and money to get books shipped or get them to my hotel room and drag them over or try to cram stuff into luggage, that doesn't really make sense. But I'm not Scotty Young. I can't sit there and draw commission after commission after commission and just I crank them out sounds bad, but you know what I mean. Like Scotty is fast. He's a machine at being able to just put out wonderful work. I don't work like that, so I can't make it up in numbers. And I eventually figured out there's this art auction, and I spend all this time making a piece for the art auction. Why don't I just make 2 pieces? And they kind of go together. They don't necessarily. It's not like half of a two. Like a. It's not half of a wraparound cover or anything, but they kind of feel like they would be in the same room. I put one in the auction, and then I tell everybody else I'm holding the other one at my table until Sunday after the auction, and I'll let it go for the same price.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that way, if the person who won the auction wants that piece, they can come buy the companion. Or if the person who was like runner-up still want it, like, man, I hate that I got outbid on that. Mm-hmm. Well, you have a second chance.
Yeah.
That's a really good way of looking at that one. That's and that goes to something that I feel like with pricing, like it creates sort of a, for lack of a better word, a fairness there. And I'm curious how y'all price things, because there's a lot of different things. There's what the market will bear. There's what I tend to. My instinct is to make things as low as I can make them in order to ensure that the most number of people can get them. But then also, I want to make money with it. So it's like, so what are your things? So something like Cara suggested that I do years ago. So like at the first 221 BCon, where I was, I think, one of 3 fellas of like 300 people. But you, like, I was thinking about making prints, and I was like, well, I designed these to be 11 by 17, and I think you and Jackie were Jackie Lewis were telling me, well, no, make them, we do multiple sizes, so that different, if somebody wants a $5 one, they can get a little one, and I was like, real artisty control. I was like, oh, if it's designed for this size, it needs to be this size. But I did that, and very few people buy the little one, but it's there if somebody wants a little one. And having those dual options make me feel less bad about charging more for the prestige things.
The people that want to spend money on nice art will spend the money, but I think for all of us, we also tend to have a younger audience. And so I always want to have things that are affordable at my table. If like kids come by and I'm like, oh, well, I've got these stickers for a couple bucks, or I've got this pack of postcards, for $5, and just giving, like, kids feel super cool when they can hand you money for something, especially if it's signed. It makes their day. And so like, I try to have a good range of prices. And I was really underselling myself for a long time, and I've had to gradually increase the prices of like my large prints and stuff. But yeah, I think having that wide range of products at different price points is super, super good and helpful.
Yeah, some of the pricing is based on what the market will bear, and then some of it's also what the cost of manufacturing it is. If paper prices went up, or this just cost you more because you got a nice finish on it, or you splurged for the better paper, you can probably justify going a little higher than what maybe you're seeing at the other tables. But it has to be relative. It can't just be a price bump because, I'm making this an exclusive. Yeah. People can sniff that out instantly. And I totally agree with what Cara was saying about having stuff at different price points. You got to have stuff that's in that like couple $1 to $5 range. You should probably also have some things that are just free, so that you can give stuff away to like the cool kids, just like Scott Kurtz here says. Yeah, I always have a couple things behind the table that are that are just freebie fun, little bookmarks and things like that kids can get, and then lower priced items, and then it goes up from there until you get to commissions and original art. And obviously that's a totally different kind of pricing mechanism and threshold.
It doesn't hurt either to look at what other people around you are pricing at, and obviously don't undersell your stuff just to like compete, and that hurts everybody. But like I learned, I did a thought bubble a few years ago, and I got there with one, like my usual price set in mind, and I realized that, like, I don't know why, but everybody in the UK was charging like half of what I usually charge for like my minis and stuff. And I was very unprepared for that. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to be like the American person here charging 2 or 3 times what everybody else is. So I adjusted accordingly, and it worked out fine. But I'm glad I looked around first and saw what other people were selling for.
Now, when you're going to a show that you haven't done before, do you have a rubric or a way of determining what it is that you're going to bring to that show? Does it change from show to show?
It does. Again, this is definitely more when I was doing both anime and comic conventions. Those are 2 very different things. I would bring very different products to both of those. Comic shows, I know people tend to buy the bigger prints and the books and stuff. Anime shows, they want a lot of like enamel pins and cute like merchandise, not so much books and prints. And it's just a matter of like learning what cons are gonna, like, what's gonna sell at what con. Like I sell lots and lots of prints at Emerald City, but I sell lots and lots of books at Heroes. So it's weird. Yeah, you were saying you sell lots of prints at Heroes. I can't.
I mean, obviously it's been a couple of years since I've been there, but I remember there was a period where I felt like I couldn't sell a book to save my life at Heroes. So I would spend all that time and effort getting the books there, and then I wouldn't sell enough to get rid of a box. So I'd still have to ship all the boxes back.
Well, David, I wonder with your case specifically, there is such a especially family geared book market at Heroes, and such a repeat market. Like so many of the people that go to Heroes are the same families year after year. I wonder if they already owned the Mouse books.
Sure, they already had them.
And it also could be,
it could also be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like if I had a couple bad years of not selling books, and then I go, I shouldn't bring books here, and then it's multiple years. It's multiple years of me not bringing books. Nobody expects to get books from me, so why would they buy books from me? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, in terms of new conventions, it's been a long time since I've done a new convention, but I think the logistics of what I can bring is usually the limiting factor. If I know that there's going to be a really easy way for me to ship stuff there, either I know somebody in the area or I know that I can ship things to the hotel, I might ship some stuff. Otherwise, it's just what I can fit in a suitcase and or what I know can fit on the size table.
So I'm curious about the shipping aspect and how y'all handle that, because I tend to only I will go to shows and like sit at a publisher or something like that I'm not tabling at, but I tend to only table at shows that I can drive to. And I'm willing to drive, like 10 or whatever hours, because I'm bringing my giant barn. Essentially, I have if anybody hadn't seen it, I have a big wooden setup that is modular, and I just build it to spec each time I get there.
Just raises a barn.
It's the best.
And it's great for me for a variety of reasons, but it also means if I'm already bringing that stuff, then there's no reason I can't bring more prints than I would ever sell, like copies of everything that I would have, copies of every book, copies of all the card sets, copies of whatever else. Like I don't have to limit my quantity to go to a show. And so that concern of, well, did I leave money on the table by not bringing this or not bringing that is never a factor. But it also means that I never do West Coast shows. Well, that's it. It just means I never do West Coast shows. That's everything like Midwest this way. I feel that I would want to do. I feel comfortable doing. So what's y'all's what is y'all's I guess, logistics for getting stuff to places that you aren't driving to or that you can't check a bag? Like, how do you ship it? I never done it. I'm real curious.
So a lot of the thing that I ship the most often are books. And sometimes we ship those here from the house, but more often than not, what's happening is we are reaching out to my publisher, Archaea, and having them ship books either from their home office or from the distributor. And we will just find out an address to ship them to. Either the convention center or the convention organizer might have a store or something like that they're willing to accept deliveries for, or to the hotel. And
what kind of turnaround do you expect on that sort of thing? Like how far in advance do you need to plan to send them?
We usually let them know a couple of weeks in advance just to give them a heads up. I don't really know how long I think if we ship stuff here from the house, we might ship it a week beforehand and then just have it sit. At the hotel, you have to be careful because there is a fee for them receiving packages. I got nailed with one of those at Chicago one time, even though Chicago's drivable for us. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, this will be so much easier if I just have the publisher send the books to the hotel. And I was sharing a room with Jeremy Bastian. And so we had them send all of our books, my stuff and his stuff. And it was like 15 boxes, 10 boxes, 15 boxes. And we got hammered where we were just like.
Yeah, it's like at least $10 a box sometimes.
It was more.
Yeah.
It was more.
Ouch.
Yeah. But usually it's books and usually it's going through the publisher. So it ends up coming out of my creator statement at the end. I still get charged for that shipping, but I don't have to upfront pay for it unless, like I said, we ship stuff here from home. But I still bring a lot of stuff to conventions in luggage. And Julia and I have gotten really good at saving up points, figuring out the right times to buy tickets. We have enough membership status with we always fly with one airline so that we just keep accruing points with that airline. And then that means I get more weight on my bag. And then for a show like Emerald City, which is a cross-country trip for me, and it's also a show that's big enough that warrants a 10x10 booth. So I've got a lot of space to fill. We will splurge or use points to get the first class airfare, because with first class airfare, we each get 3 checked bags up to 70 pounds.
Oh, wow. Oh,
and sometimes with the
holy
perks,
moly.
And sometimes with the perks, we can get a companion ticket. So what that means is we will pay for 1 first class ticket, get the companion ticket for free. So we've only paid for 1 first class
70-pound bags.
And now we get 6 bags checked at 70 pounds each.
Oh, wow. That's great.
That's really freaking smart.
These are the real good tips. I had no idea. That's fantastic. What airline do you usually fly?
We use Delta.
Okay.
We've had, I know any airline you mention, there are going to be people who are like, oh, that's my favorite airline. And other people who are like, that is the worst airline I've ever flown. I have so many problems with them. We've never had a problem. I get that other people have. The biggest reason we go with Delta is there's a hub in my home airport. Like
that's
the
Detroit
airport.
Factor. Yeah.
That's the hub. So we've had times where you get on the plane and where it's just taking forever. And they're like, we got a part that we just need to have checked out. Actually, now they're bringing a replacement part. Oh, now it's going to be another hour. Actually, why don't everybody get off the plane? Then we'll have people come back on the plane. When I fly out of Detroit and they have that problem, they go, you know what, everybody, we've got a part wrong with the plane. We're going to have everybody get off the aircraft, go 1 gate down. We're pulling up another plane and we'll get you out of here as fast as we can. Nice. So we don't have to wait. We don't have to worry about waiting or having the flight canceled and have to stay a day longer than we wanted to. It's all about the hub status rather than, I think, the specific airline.
Yeah. I was going to add, a quick anecdote. I'm reasonably sure this is Chris Giarusso, who does G-Man, but I think that he had a thing that he would do which was a great technique, which is that he would pack no clothes and no toiletries and just books And when he would
buy
he'd get to the town that he was going to, and then would go to Goodwill and spend $3 on an outfit.
Wow.
And go by Walgreens and get whatever he needed for the thing, and then put nothing but things in there, because he was like, I only need t-shirt and jeans, and I can always find those for cheap. So he's like, easier than shipping. If that wasn't Chris, so my apologies to Chris for impugning him and stealing his sword from somebody else.
It's a clever trick. So whoever it is, that's good. At some conventions, especially if you get into an area where you're going to have a booth, where it's not just the table with the two, that's the standard thing. They go, you get with this contract and what you pay, you get a table, you get 2 chairs, the end. Sometimes you can get into spaces at conventions where they start offering other pieces of furniture, extra tables, extra chairs, or even some of them will show you a catalog for like, do you want bar height tables? Do you want bookshelves? Do you want a tack board? Do you want all? It is ridiculously expensive. I mean, it's like $70 a chair to use it for 3 days. Mm-hmm. And so what Julia and I found, I think it was the first time we went to Emerald City Con where we had a booth. We were like, how are we going to fill up this space? How are we going to make it look big? How are we going to display and store all the products? We're like, there's an IKEA in Seattle. Let's go to IKEA, buy the cheapest wood bookshelves they have, set them up at the convention center, because it's all hand tools. It's nothing power. You don't even need like a drill driver. So that way they can, the convention center will be okay with it that you're assembling stuff. Mm-hmm. And then our plan originally was at the end of the show, we just let people know, hey, if you live in the area and you want some free shelves, here you go. Because buying those bookcases outright was still cheaper than renting them for 3 days.
Yeah.
And we would just figure we would buy them again the next year and the next year, because it's still cheaper. What ended up happening was somebody I know who lives local was like, oh, I'll take those home. And then the next year, before Emerald City, they said, hey, do you want us to deliver your shelves to the convention? And I'm like, oh, you don't have to do that. We'll and they're like, no, it's no problem. We'll bring them. And so every year they keep bringing me back the same shelves.
That's the best.
Wow.
Yeah, that's we never had to rebuy them. But even if we did have to rebuy them, it's a hack where it's way cheaper than renting furniture or trying to drive or ship specialty items or things like that.
See, I do the same thing Chris does, and I pretty much drive to every convention I do, with a few exceptions. Knowing how much merch I move at Emerald City, even though I live in Michigan, I still make the drive in my car. Mm-hmm. I love it. I love long road trips. It's a good time for me. Last year it was not so great. I got super, super sick, and I had to lay in the hotel for 3 days dying before the con. And then I got okay again, and then made it to the con, and then drove from Seattle to Chicago for C2E2 and got a tire busted on the way there. And so there's issues doing cons from cars, but I enjoy the road trip aspect so much. And I like being able to, I go to IKEA. If I know there's IKEA in the area, I'll stop at IKEA and stock up on additional supplies and display stuff, and have snacks and stuff that I want. I just find driving a lot less stressful, but I'm not like Chris. I'll just bring everything I have. I don't have to worry about restocking in between cons so much. It's just all in my tiny Honda Civic. It's all there with me. If I do fly, I do pare down a lot. I have to have a con in Europe this year, and I'm already oh, what am I going to do? I don't want to travel with a bunch of bags for that. So I'm going to probably ship stuff to Europe, but it's,
have y'all ever thought about trying to get in touch with a printer or somebody in the place that you're going and having them do stuff there rather than ship it? I think more for Europe than for domestic travel.
That's a good idea. I know.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I've had stuff printed for Seattle. I've sent stuff to Seattle printers that I picked up when I got there and stuff, and that's very handy. But
yeah,
usually for domestic stuff, I'm printing everything I need for the year all at once and getting a bulk printing discount by doing that. So if I spread that around to lots of little printers all over the country, I probably lose money because of the discount and the bulk effect. But I have done the European thing. Usually it's because I'm making a special print that is specific to the location that I'm going. Like I'm doing a special German print, or I'm doing a special London print or something like that. And so we will have someone over there handle that, either through that language's publisher or somebody that we already know at the convention or something like that.
Well, Cara, something you mentioned like getting sick at Emerald City. So you sometimes have, you know, long-standing health things, if you don't mind me bringing that up. But I feel like that's something that we don't necessarily discuss that much with peers in regards to tabling. And so folks who have especially dietary things or diabetes, who need to eat a certain amount of thing, or folks who have other things that, you know, sitting for a long time or being stationary for a long time are difficult. What, if any, accommodations do you sort of make for yourself, knowing that travel is going to be rough on you?
For me, like, again, that's another reason I like to drive, because I get very anxious in planes. I like having the control of being able to stop and rest when I need to and feel better. And at conventions, for the most part, I try to have a table helper with me, like a dedicated table helper. I'll have an assistant. And I have, like, my good friend Brodsky generally helps me out with most of my cons. But if they can't do a con with me, then I'll reach out to people I know in the area. I'm like, hey, do you want to make some money for the weekend? I'll, you know, have fun at the con. And it just helps me so much because I you know, I'll have commissions to do all weekend. But I will engage with every single person that comes to my table, and I can't do that and work on commissions. So I have to have an assistant like Brodsky who will force me to sit there and work on commissions or eat stuff when I need to, or like just take a break when they know that I'm starting to feel sick. So it's good to have a table helper that you really trust and communicate well with, and eat at your table. I feel like I talk to a lot of people who don't ever want to eat at their table. But I mean, you're stuck there for sometimes like 10 hours a day. It's a full-time job. You got to eat. You got to take breaks. Yeah. So, yeah.
And David, Julia usually goes to show, or does Julia usually go to shows with you?
She usually does. There was some time there where life circumstances made it so that it wasn't as easy. And I would have a friend, table helper. It was a friend who knew enough about Mouse Guard and kind of being at conventions. They knew how to do the work. And it is just handy, super handy to go. At some point, I'm going to need lunch. So, you know, there's the petty cash. You know, if you want to get up and get a hamburger for us both, or some, you know, pizza or whatever the concession stand is selling that doesn't look terrible, and bring it back, and then take turns stuffing your face so that there's somebody there who can still check people out, and bring up sales and answer questions and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, taking a break and stretching is important. Eating is important. I like eating at my table just because it means that I'm going to get back to work as fast as possible. Like the idea of getting up and taking an hour-long break while you go across the street to the restaurant or whatever. It's like, that's why am I here if that's what I'm doing? You know, that doesn't. But it is really frustrating that I will purposely, like, you know, Julia will be right at the front of the table, and I will push my chair as far back away as I can in the corner. I'm eating like this, and someone will go, "Can I get him to sign that? Would you sign this?" And I've got like mayonnaise and ketchup sticking down my face, and I'm like, "Can I finish eating my sandwich first?"
I literally sit on the floor, like sometimes underneath the table, just like inhaling like whatever food. I'm like, don't look at me.
I have by and large started taking things that I can eat in tiny snippets. You know, nothing that if it takes more than 15 seconds to chew a bite of and set down, for that reason, because you get interrupted like so much.
The problem I have with that is you end up having 2 bites.
Yeah.
Which is not enough nourishment. And
No,
you get
you're absolutely
sidetracked
right.
enough that it's 3 hours later and you're like, oh, I still haven't eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which
I
is
do
why,
this
like,
a lot now where I'll take a picture of what it looks like behind my table setup like halfway through the day, and it's always like 5 different drinks in various stages of like completion and like a half-eaten hot dog and bags of chips, and I'm like, none of it's done. And I always choose the worst foods too, because like especially if I'm traveling to other cities, I always want to eat like cool local stuff, and I'll have people bring me stuff. Like in Seattle, there's a place in Pike's Market that sells like this Filipino soup called sinigang that I love. But it's like I'm sitting at my table trying to eat like this salmon soup. I'm like,
not the right choice.
so good.
Yeah. I bring up Dan's comment here because I feel like all of us are going to say eat for that, although that may not be the case. But I do think that is something that a lot of people do tend to forget, is that you do need to plan to eat, like especially busy shows. Like it's really hard to feel like you can get away from your table, or if it's not a busy show, you feel like you can't get away from your table because what if that's your one sale? But any other first time advice?
I've got advice for Dan. I mean, as a production artist, you're gonna be able to nail this, but signage, table signage that explains pricing. This is going to be your first convention, so you don't already know the questions you're going to be asked over and over, but you can start to think about them in advance. Things like, do you take commissions? And I guess if the answer is no, you don't want a sign saying, no, I don't take commissions. But if you do take commissions, don't wait for somebody to ask you. Have a sign on the table that says commissions are this much, or an example. Also, try to get some things that are vertical on your table. Don't rely on everything being flat. Anything you can do with even taking cardboard boxes that you've used to bring items in, once you've unpacked them, put that cardboard box up on the table and then drape your tablecloth over that so that you have some staggered heights. Get yourself some little easels. You can get those at hobby stores. Put any kind of books or prints. Put a couple of them that are standing up. Sorry, I'm not in frame. A couple of them that are like standing up. Put price tags on them or near them. Double up on price tags. If you have something like prints where all prints are $20 or whatever, make 5 of those signs in case one of them just walks away, because who knows, some little kid just grabs something like a sign and you think, why would anybody want that? But it disappears. Also, if you want to spread out your display and you have some prints over on this side of the table and some prints over on this side of the table, you have enough signs that you can have it say prints are $20 in both places. So do great graphic design signs, try to pre-answer any questions that people are going to have, and try to get things vertical where you can.
Have a copy of your price list facing you behind the table too, especially if you have it open.
That's
because
smart.
I forget my prices all the time too. Some people are like, oh, how much is I don't know. I'm craning my head, like trying to see, like having that price list behind the table helps so much. But and like you said, verticality is key. Like Chris has it with his barn setup, and I'm sorry I keep referencing like anime cons versus comic cons, but I think this is a thing that was so big a part of anime cons, was like the big walls of prints behind people and all of that. And it's becoming more of a thing at comic cons, and you have to find that balance where you've got a lot of height, but you're not being annoying to your neighbors. You don't want to overshadow your neighbors so much, but you want people to stop and see your table. Like my display, I have like 3 grid cubes like stacked up on either side, and sorry, I got distracted. But then I also like drape flowers everywhere and like lighting. I put up lights and stuff, and it's very elaborate, but it makes people stop because my table is taller usually than people around me, but hopefully I don't annoy them.
And if you're going to do that kind of structural thing, set it up at home. Know for sure that it's structural.
Yeah.
There are so many times where I've been in an artist alley area where, the next row over is like back to back with you. and somebody has erected some cockamamie thing with like C-clamps and fishing rods and whatever, at some point during convention, it's falling over, and it's going to fall over on like two different people's setups when it's collapsing. And so obviously obey whatever the rules of the convention are for verticals. Don't be a jerk, but also even if it's within all of those rules, make sure it can actually stand up and it's not going to fall on somebody.
The only time I've ever had a display fall down, I was so mad. This is like at MomoCon, like maybe 10 years ago. I had my grid set up and the show floor was closed for the day. I was like at a restaurant 2 blocks away on a date, and I get a call from like the artist alley coordinator saying, you got to get back here. Somebody knocked over your stuff. I had to run all the way back. And it was just a guy who like turned and his backpack just took out everything.
Yeah.
And
that's not a structural flaw on your part. That's
yeah. But you know, that
ball of a backpack.
You just got to think about those things. And I was an idiot, and I had been working, I do watercolor commissions, and I had left my like water like on the table, and that got all over all of my prints. And I was like, well, cool. So not doing that again.
Mm-hmm. I would say don't leave anything behind at the table overnight that you couldn't live without. So if you have originals, take them home, take them back to the hotel room every night. Anything else that's fancy. We even pack up like our square readers and things like that, because even though those are replaceable, you don't want to be starting, Saturday of a show with no way to read cards. So take the stuff that, prints, it sucks. That's income. That's cost. Like you paid money for those, but they are replaceable. If something like that happens, but if you lose your card reader on day 2 of the show, if you lost any of your, obviously cash, you're taking your cash with you, or original art, or if you have any other kind of one of a kind prototype sculpture, something like that has to, really can't be replaced. Bring it back with you.
Watch your stuff. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say what you one of the pieces of advice that I would give, and it relates to what David's saying, is I have a con checklist that Liz and I go through a few days before the show, and then when I'm packing for the show. And among those, it's $200 in change in fives, because everything I do is divisible by 5. You want to make sure you have cash change. You want to make sure you have a square reader. You want to test your square reader before you leave. Charge yourself $1 on your credit card. Make sure that it works. Make sure that it goes to your bank account. Make sure that it doesn't jam up, because you don't want that to happen like while you're there. Get backup batteries that you can plug to your phone, because most conventions either charge a insane amount of money for electricity access or don't have it at all. And so or
they're charging for Wi-Fi. Yeah. And the fact that you're kind of on a roaming signal is going to drain your battery faster.
Yeah. So have 1 or 2 of those little cylinder backup batteries or square backup batteries that you can plug your phone in if it starts to go down.
Absolutely.
I feel like, but like that kind of thing, make sure that you have, a lot of people will ask you for business cards. I say, different people have different thoughts about this. I have my social media stuff on my business card. I don't have my email. I don't have my phone number. I don't have anything like that, because I don't want to be contacted by anybody. I hate interacting with people. I don't hate interacting with people. I like to have a degree of control over how.
I was going to say control your
interactions. And so most people can reach you via those social media platforms easily enough, or go to your website and find your email address or something like that. But have those out, have them on the table. People can grab those. A lot of people will want that. If you sell prints, get little 11 by 17 or 12 by 18 poly bags. Like they don't have to be fancy. If they want fancy ones, they can bring their own or buy their own. But having one of those, you can drop your business card in there with your print. Like that makes it easier for them to carry it around. And then also when they're carrying it, people see that print. It's not in an envelope. It's not something like that. People say, oh, I like that. Where did you get that? Like a lot of traffic comes from people seeing somebody else carrying something that they bought from you.
We ended up printing totes.
Smart. Yeah.
So, and obviously that's not for everybody, but some people who want to spend the extra money and get a tote also then have mouse guard on the outside of their tote, and it's a lot. It's a better for the planet, but also way stronger when you have to haul a stack of mouse guard books around.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, as far as business cards go, I don't give them out at cons anymore. I just have a very front and center sign on my table now with my Twitter handle and Instagram. I'm the same everywhere online. It's not hard to find me. And I keep business cards literally just to give either people I've talked to that I want to collaborate with, or editors, publishers, etc. Business connections get the business cards. That said, I have seen people start who are giving out business cards at conventions leave a space on their card to put their table location during that convention, so that when people are trying to figure out, oh, where did I get this print, or I wanted to go back to that table and get something later, your table number is right there. I think that's super smart. I'm probably going to start doing business cards again for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So this is also determined on do we sell prints? So Cara and I both sell prints for different like movie things that we like or stuff like that. David, your prints are almost exclusively mouse guard, or they're exclusively mouse guard.
Well, okay, so I've done a couple like
TMNT or something.
Things.
Yeah,
I haven't done any Ninja Turtle. No, any character that
I wasn't sure if any of your stuff that you do for there you turn into prints or cards or anything like that.
No, I mean technically I'm not allowed. Also, I decided a long time ago that my focus of my booth should be mouse guard, and so I don't sell any prints of anything that I don't own the rights to or isn't in the public domain. So
like your the one stuff you might have, or
right. When the Willows is an option. Also, I did a Halloween print this last fall that I did as a big silk screen with a local silk screener. Nice. But it was made up.
Share pictures of these, but I can't figure out how to get the picture thing working. So I'm just not.
But print sizes, I go from 18 by 24 down to 5 by 7, but I don't have every step of the way. I'm also not one of the people who will do the same image in different sizes. I do the image the way I want it to be displayed, but I do make sure that I have small prints and I have large prints. They're just different images. And it's because this big image that has tons of detail that needs to be that big to really be seen works as an 18 by 24. But if I shrunk it down to postcard size, you lose the magic of what it's supposed to be. So I do a different kind of image that works really well at a small size. Or I have a theme of square 11 by 11 prints that I release a new one every year. And so that's, that always stays in that size. But I have, things from kind of small to medium and then large.
I feel like I've been kind of like trying to figure out the last few years what I want to do as far as print sizes go. 11 by 17s used to do really well, and then when I started carrying smaller sizes, those are what took off for me, and I started realizing I was carrying around all of these bulky 11 by 17 prints that were super heavy, taking up a lot of space. And I would sell like maybe 5 to 10 of each print every con. I'm like, this isn't worth it. This is stupid. So I kind of pulled back from doing that. And that's when people are like, oh, do you have larger prints? And I'm like, well, not anymore. So I think what I'm going to do in the future is when I debut new prints, I'll have them in the larger size and then kind of like start to retire things into smaller sizes as I go. Because I do a lot of fan work, and that's what I'm known for. Because I try, like, anytime I do large prints of my original characters or work or anything, nobody cares. They just want to see me draw sexy video game boys, which I'm fine with. But that's what sells for me at conventions. So I'm like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, the mediums and smalls are what sell for me. When I do large things, they're because I want to, or because I've had a few people ask for them, and then I try to just manage expectations so that if I only sell a few, it's gonna be okay financially, and then I just have a backstock of them for the random few people who actually want them. I know that there are people who say all the time, "Oh man, it'd be great to get like a big like a movie size poster, like a full sheet poster. And I actually still have them in my online store right now. We did a Mouse Guard Mondo poster. It's been years. I still have stock of them because people just don't have room to display them. They don't have room.
That's the thing. I think that's why my like 4x6 prints do so well. Like people will buy like 10 of them at a time because they get excited to have stuff that they can put on their fridge or like in their lockers or whatever. So yeah, but yeah, it's very frustrating. Like last year I did like this big sexy Venom pinup that I was like, yeah, this is the best. Everyone's gonna love this because this is like what I cater to. And everyone's like, oh, I can't wait to get a print of that. No, I'll sell that. And I was like, yes, I'm going to make a ton of money with this. And then, nope, nobody wants to buy it at conventions because they look at it and they're like, I probably can't put that in my house. And I'm like, you're not a coward.
There's also the problem. Some people are like, well, I have a spot at home for that, but I'm not at home. I'm in wherever, Seattle, Chicago, etc. I got to get that thing home.
Yeah.
How do I get that thing home? And even though I've pointed out, oh, there's the Hot Flips booth right over there. They'll sell you a sleeve that this will fit in, or they sell tubes or whatever. They'll go, all right, I'll think about it. You sell this through your online store though, right? I could have it shipped. And you go, yeah, I do. And that's the end of that. They're not.
Yep.
Yeah.
One out of every 50 people who says that actually follows through and places the order when they get home.
Yeah. For me, 11x17 is my big seller. But here's the thing. I have found that my 11x17 set, whatever I display, that's what sells. So if I put up 5x7s and have 11x17s of that, people want the 5x7. I post the 11x17s on that barn wall because it's a higher price point. And so I make more money if people buy those. And then also they're easier to see from a distance. So that one tends to be what it is, but also like I will, what David and Cara both said about verticality, like that's very big for me. And so anything that I have that I want to sell, like if I have it in a box or anything like that, it doesn't sell. And I know, Cara, you had that happen with you when you tried to move your prints into a flip through thing. And so like if it's not on the wall, if it's not up facing, it doesn't move. And so I have like these Appalachian Folk Monster card set. I have the whole card set out of its little container, every single one of them up on the wall. The Santas that I have, they're all displayed on the wall. Everything is displayed on the wall because that's what makes it sell. In terms of the wall thing, and Cara, yours and mine are similar in that we both kind of do a Lucy Van Pelt psychiatry booth setup. Because I think a lot of people will put stuff behind them, and sometimes it's hard to do. And David, yours are, you have stuff on the table in front of you, generally speaking.
Yeah.
I feel like behind you really limits how much people can see, how much people can buy. And so having stuff sort of at the back edge of the table and a space for you to be in there can be really helpful for that.
And there's a line there that you have to be careful with. And I haven't seen Cara's table to know for sure. I'm sure if Chris is vouching for her, she's on the right side of the line. But you have to be careful with those kind of window things that you also aren't starting to feel like a McDonald's drive-through.
It's funny,
where there's just enough room for like, can I take your order? What print would you like, please? Do you want fries with that?
When I was trying to rethink my table coming post pandemic, I was like, I want to do complete new thing and like figure out how to do this like without breathing on people anymore. And I had actually like drawn up these plans to have like a giant, almost kind of like what you do, Chris, with a giant wall in front of me, but like printed on like a vinyl sheet and just have like a square window cut out, and it was gonna like look like a food truck display, and I would just have like a menu board printed of all the stuff that I was offering, and then just like hand stuff through this like little food truck window to people. I was like, I need to figure out how to do this, but I think that, like you're saying, David, that really kind of like it doesn't feel great buying stuff from people that way at a convention. I don't think, like, it would be weird.
And I agree that putting stuff behind you it's problematic. It's also when you go that vertical with those kind of things, it's going to be the stuff that tends to fall. It's if you have lots of little images, people have to kind of focus to see it. And so you're sitting at a table, they're standing with their belly against the table, trying to look over you and just kind of doing this like, what's that one? Oh, that one's cool. It needs to be in front. It needs to be on easels in front of you. It needs to be on a board in front of you, something like that. I use my banner as my backdrop, or at Emerald City and Baltimore, where I have a booth, I'll do those IKEA shelves. But everything that's on the IKEA shelf is also on the table. It's just more display of the same thing. It really is. Like, it's part of its storage, so we don't have to dip under the table to get more stuff. You can just grab extras when it's time to restock the table. But it's that peacock effect. I'm putting up all my tail feathers to try to show you how cool I am.
Yep.
Eugene, I have never been to Angoulême. I'd love to. America has something sort of in that same. I think that the Toronto show is kind of similar. TCAF, and I think that Cartoon Crossroads is kind of similar, but Cartoon Crossroads is the same time as New York this year, maybe last time as well, and that's hard because New York is like 1/7 of my yearly income, and so it's not something I can skip to go to this festival that I really want to go to, but I'm not going to see a return on. But I'd love to do Angoulême, just haven't had a chance.
Jeremy Bastian's there right now.
I want to go so bad.
I've never been to Angoulême, but I have been to Lucca in Italy.
Oh, that would be good.
Which I've heard is
that's
similar.
That's not the Bologna one.
No, this one's in an ancient.
Lucca's a different. Okay, I'm mixing up two. Okay,
Lucca's in an ancient walled city. So the old city is inside this. It's one of the only remaining walled cities where the wall is still intact. Mm-hmm. And so, you have to go into this walled city, and then the entire area inside the walled city becomes part of the festival. It's fantastic. I was invited by my Italian publisher, and all I really brought was a portfolio, and I was just there as service to make fans happy and do sketches and sign books. And if somebody wanted some original art, I had it there, but I knew that my goal for being there was to experience the festival and to make people happy, It wasn't like a normal con kind of experience for me.
The con I'm doing in Europe, I don't think I've been announced as a guest yet, so I can't say what one it is, but I think I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to go and like mostly do sketches and stuff for people and try not to worry about having so much product, just because I don't want to fly with stuff, and I'd rather just like interact with fans and enjoy being there.
Now, when you
I also want to say for people starting out, we're talking about all this stuff, whether it's backdrops or banners or tablecloths and there are commercial versions of all those things that you can get. But if you're just starting out and you don't have the money to invest in all of it, you don't have to invest in all of it right up front. No. You can go slow. You can also make a lot of things yourself, rely on cardboard, rely on like mat board or foam core is a really resilient material. I
did foam core for years for everything.
You can make all kinds of easels and stands and things yourself out of cardboard. I actually have a video up on my YouTube channel about how I make my own signs for the display, for how much everything costs, because I wanted to come up with a design that was vertical, was really easy to read, was the right size, wasn't teeny tiny, was the right size, and that I could take down. I could make flat so that I could stack all those things up and put them away without them being dimensional. And I wanted them also to be easily editable. So because they're flat and they're made out of little Bristol board tiles, you can buy these little sheets of Bristol board that are like 4x4 or 6x6, just a pad of them. I have a whole thing about how I put like a kickstand on the back, but the front side, we just buy printable mailing labels that are half sheets, like each half of the sheet is a sticky mailing label. I have a Photoshop grid for my little price labels. I just print out on the mailing list or the mailing label. I stick it on, it automatically adheres, and you just trim it up with an X-Acto knife, and it looks like you've gone and paid for really expensive printed signage.
Mhm.
And it's just a mailing label I slapped on a thing, and I can keep covering over the last one. So
That's smart.
if I had something for San Diego that now I don't have anymore and I have a new item, I can just put a new sticker over the old thing until they get really thick.
I have cheap I just use frames from IKEA because Chris, my table tends to be really floral and feminine, and so I use a lot of lace and stuff. And like, if you can, like, try to find a theme for your table. Almost like while I was doing Over the Garden Wall is when I started incorporating like woodsy stuff and plants and flowers and stuff. I was like, oh, my little whimsical table, and I still have that going even though I'm not working on that series anymore.
But now you live in the woods by a lake, so
now I live in the woods anyway. And
yeah,
I feel like people know what to look for to find me at cons. So
well, and I think something that you mentioned with talking about the food truck display, and David mentioned with the other things is a lot of convention stuff is planning ahead. And if you want to have a table setup that you're happy with and things like that, there is, you plan it out like a product, sketch in your sketchbook. Like if you draw your table ahead of time, like that makes a world of difference to what your table is going to look like. You can use graph paper and determine, well, my books are 12 inches wide, my things are this thing. And that can absolutely make a world of difference.
Even better than that, just set up at home. If you conventions are using the same kind of folding tables that you can get at any big box store. And if you don't already have one of those folding tables and don't want to pay for them, just measure a spot out on your dining room table and mark it out with some painter's tape, and then physically start stacking up your books. And once you get something that you like, take a photo of it with your phone from both the front and kind of like top down, so that you can match the setup when you get to the convention.
One thing I do every convention I go to is I will make sure I take time to walk around and look at the other tables and see. I'll make note of what is catching my eye, why I want to stop at these particular tables. I'm like, what is it about this table that's making me want to see what this artist is doing? If it's even, sometimes it's not even the art or the books. I'm just like, this is a really great display. And especially if I'm flying to a con, on the plane ride home, I'll sit and I'll like go over my notes and I'll adjust like my own table design. I'll sit there and sketch. I'm like, okay, what changes can I make so that the next convention is better for me? So it's like, always learning.
And to Loss's point, you also never know when you might actually get less as well.
Yeah.
Every now and then there's a
show.
Oh, you're not using 8-foot tables, you're using 6-foot tables? I don't remember seeing that in any of the literature. Damn.
Yeah.
Or they're using 8-foot tables that aren't anywhere near as deep as everybody else's. They're really slim.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, the way I had this planned out for how many books can stack deep and where the easel foot goes and all that stuff doesn't apply anymore. So you have to start rearranging on the fly.
Yeah. We bring a tablecloth. I'm of the bring a tablecloth school. I think a lot of people
absolutely
are. I know Cara always brings pretty stuff.
Bring two.
Oh yeah. I have an advantage because when I was doing cons while I was still in Atlanta, I was working in an interior design place, and they would just give me all of the extra like fabrics and stuff, like drapery fabrics. So I've got like tablecloths that are like these designer linens that are like $500. I'm just like throwing it down on my table and spilling soda on it. I'm like, it's pretty.
But like bed sheets are an easy thing. Like I just go and get if I forget, like I'll get a full size bed sheet or a queen size bed sheet or a twin size bed sheet, and that usually is perfect for and those are easy to wash too. Take it home and wash it.
IKEA has great stuff.
And I say bring two because you want one that's down on the table. And then when it's time to pack up for the night, instead of trying to leave yourself enough extra where you can fold up the edges, because that usually also exposes anything you have underneath, just drape a section right on top.
I never thought about that.
I have a semi-sheer cloth that I drape over. Like, I don't drape it over. I like pin it up on my display so that like you can still kind of see what I have on display. So if I leave the con a little bit early for whatever reason,
Oh, right.
you can see people still at the con kind of like look and see what I've got going on. Or if I'm late coming to the con, they can get an idea when I'm going to be there. And I'm like, oh, well, I saw that on your table and I'm like to get one. So that has helped me a lot.
So Tad asks, when tabling alone, which I usually am, how do you handle security when you leave for a panel? Sheet over table, do you take your cash with you? Well, of course I'm going to say I take my cash with me, Tad, or otherwise people are going to know that. No, I do. I do take my cash with me. I keep it in my pocket. But generally speaking, a lot of times I know my table neighbors, and I just say, hey, I'm heading to a panel. I'm heading to the bathroom. I'm running to get a sandwich, etc. And I tend to be pretty trusting at shows. I have not today. I've been doing stuff for about 15 years, and so far as I know, I haven't had anything stolen off my table. And maybe that's because I like to think that that's the inherent goodness of people. Maybe it's if
You're terrible
people know me, they're less likely to do it. I'm not small, that might be a factor. I don't know if any of these things are contributing, but I tend to be I feel like everybody's or maybe people I tend to be pretty trusting. So I don't do too much. I take my Square reader, I take my phone, I take my cash. I leave my merchandise out because I'm like, I don't feel like anybody's going to wander with it.
If no one's going to be there, I drape the table and I put some kind of usually I have a piece of scrap paper or the insert for a cardboard box when they pack books. I take something like that, and with a big old marker, I write back at 3 or back at 2 or whatever time I know I'm going to be back, so that people know that because if I don't drape the table, they could potentially stand there and then loop back around every 20 minutes. And then when I do show up, now they're pissed.
Yeah.
But if I put up a sign, if I drape everything so it automatically looks like I'm closed, they don't have to look for the sign because it's, a flat bed sheet kind of a color and then a cardboard sign that says back at 3. They instantly understand, okay, I'm going to circle around the convention and come back here later. And then when they show up, nobody with sticky fingers gets tempted. When they show up at 3 and I show up at 3, everybody's happy.
Mm-hmm. I do the same thing with the cloth, and I'll make I'll if I have downtime at the con, that's when I'll start making my BRB signs, and I'll make really elaborately illustrated signs. And I've been walking around or on my break or whatever, and I'll get people tweeting pictures of my away signs at me because I put time and effort into them. But I used to also be very trusting, and I would take my cash with me and just kind of not really worry about what else I had underneath my table. And then at Emerald City a couple years ago, somebody stole a bag from under my table that had my Switch and glasses in it. So that was a hard lesson to learn. Don't bring your Switch to convention tables. Don't bring unless you have to be doing work on it, don't bring a laptop or tablet or anything. Just leave that in your hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason Cortez asked, do you all use Square for credit payments? If so, what hardware do you use for reading credit? Are there other options that are on the same line?
So PayPal has their own version. There's Square. There's at least one more that all have a similar kind of card reader. I think whatever you use, just make sure you're familiar with it. Set it up on your phone or on your tablet the way that's going to make checking out as quick and easy, whether that's a picture menu or whatever. The thing that I would really recommend, because I know some people who do this, is they will do offline purchasing because they're getting bad reception and they don't want to have to wait until they, get good signal. Because I'll make people stand there for a while I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting bad reception. And sometimes it's at Seattle, if you walk towards the Sky Bridge, all of a sudden it goes through. Usually my booth is pretty close to the Sky Bridge, so I'm not walking out of sight of them. But I just step out of the booth and I go like this and I get the signal and I go, okay, there we go. Now I need your signature. I know people who will do the offline thing. And then as soon as they leave the convention center, it's trying to process 20 things.
Mhm.
I'm like, what happens when two of them don't go through? Like,
Yeah, especially if they're bigger things.
yeah, like and the other thing is some of the liability has changed for credit card fraud for what kind of reader you're using. So if you're using the kind that magnetic swipes, potentially, I've never heard of this happening, but the fine legal print says that you would be on the hook because you didn't use a chip reader
Mhm.
to read the card instead of the magnetic swipe, or if you manually key in. There's potentially the same thing, and usually when you manually key in, the credit card company takes or the reader company takes a bigger chunk of the percentage. They take a bigger processing fee. So if you use the chip reader, and the chip reader is like, if you're already doing a certain amount of business, they'll send you one for free.
Yeah.
If you aren't doing that business, it costs, I don't know, $40 or something like that, but it's totally worth it.
Well, and there's
so much easier.
There are downsides to the chip reader, which is that it's got a hook to the Bluetooth, and sometimes it takes longer to get from one to another. And so since I'm tabling by myself, every second matters, especially when I have a line. And so if it takes 15, 20 seconds every time to connect to the Bluetooth, that ends up costing me mischief. So I tried a chip reader once and it gave me grief. And so I've been using the swiper since.
That might be if your phone was going to sleep in between sometimes your phone going to sleep between transactions can be that.
And it does. I close it off and turn it.
If you like decide, like, for conventions, I'm just going to have the backup battery handy because I don't want, like, I'm going to not let my phone go to sleep ever during the convention. That might save you that Bluetooth issue.
Last year when I was doing cons again, I had a lot of people asking to do tap to pay, which I don't know if that's just a post-pandemic kind of thing, not wanting to touch other things, which I can understand, but my phone doesn't have that. And now I'm like, oh, do I need to upgrade my phone now so I can take more payments? So that was the thing I hadn't encountered before, which now I have to think about.
My card reader does it. The square reader does the tap.
Okay. Yeah, I still have the swipey one. I need to get the chip reader.
Yeah.
So you might not have to upgrade your phone, just the reader.
Yeah. that would be easier.
Cheaper.
Yeah.
Eugene, on this one, for I think all of us, none of us have day jobs, so we have to make a profit when we go to shows. Like there are ones that, like, I'll occasionally go to Gen Con because I have friends there and I'm just there. Cartoon Crossroads if I can, just to attend and see what's going on. But if I'm tabling at a show, like, it's a business venture. It's the same as, opening a restaurant or something. You've got to make, as much as you might like having food. Now that's different for different people. Some people do treat it very much as a hobby, and something like that. For me, it's a job, and so I've got to do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think, even
if you're doing, can't have fun and can't enjoy it like you do, but and we all, generally speaking, enjoy our shows. I think
even if you're doing it strictly as a job, and this is like the profit matters. You shouldn't allow that to stress yourself out. If partway through the convention you're realizing, like, it's just not, it's not here for whatever reason. I brought the wrong product. This is the wrong audience. The show just is maybe not as active this year. It's a dead, something like that. You just got to roll with it. You can't let it spiral in your mind of, like, I'm not making money. I'm not going to make my table. I'm not going to.
No, I say that now, but also it's important. I think it's important to note that my first couple of years of convention shows, if I broke even, that was great.
Right.
And if you stress over breaking even, it's not good. Like, your early shows are to develop a fan base. They are to develop a readership, a relationship with your customers, a relationship with your peers. So when you're first starting out, you absolutely have to put that out of your head if you at all can, because otherwise it really does color you. You get frantic, you get manic, you get aggressive with your sales techniques. Yeah. You do lots of things. You get grouchy. Like, it really messes up your interaction with everybody that you should be interacting with.
And you need to be willing to think on your feet in those like if you start getting grouchy and crabby and this isn't working and what have I done and I'm not going to be able to succeed, all that kind of stuff, you're not going to be in the right process to do creative thinking. So sometimes I'll step back from the table and I'll just kind of look at it and I'll go, you know what, the books should be over there. And I'll mid-show kind of move some things around or even just like I wouldn't have been able to think of the auction, the second auction-like piece for Heroes that I talked about earlier. If I had been stressing about like, I don't make money at Heroes. It was more like I wonder if there's a way that I could increase sales so that in addition to having fun at this convention, I could also make it more profitable for myself. But yeah, if you agonize over it, you're not going to get that creative solution.
Yeah.
Whoops, wrong thing. Sorry.
I have taken Venmo payments at cons. I don't like doing it, but.
Hank asks, any advice related to handling commissions at shows?
Have all the answers about what you are willing to do made up in your mind ahead of time, whether that has to do with the size or the amount of detail. Like, don't wait for them to provide you a whole bunch of stuff for you to go, would I do that? You go, this is the size commission I do. This is how many figures are going to be in it, or this is the level of, if the answer is, I'll draw anything you want in this space for this amount of money, that's cool, but have that answer ready. Because also if the answer is,
I'm the exact opposite.
Really?
I determine on like a 20-minute by 20-minute basis what I am able and willing to do via a commission, based on like how busy I am, that's the big thing. But also I won't take them home. Like I do them there. I'm like, and I only take on like as many as I can see finishing by the end of that day, generally speaking.
I will take commissions back to the hotel room, and I'm at the age now where I would much rather spend my nights at conventions in my hotel room with like Postmates food and Food Network on TV while I work on commissions rather than going out now. So I don't mind sitting and working all night on commissions because I just don't want to ship them after a show. I'd rather try to get as many done during the show as possible. But I always overestimate myself. That's the most important thing I think you need to learn going into it is what you're capable of doing during a show and like when it's really busy, because sometimes you get slammed and you're like, I can't draw 10 commissions right now. Whoops.
And so, some of those, having those answers ready are things like if someone says, hey, will you draw, 50 characters in this commission? Not only know that the answer is no, but what is the threshold? Like, what are the rules that you want to come up with? Are you offering single figure? Is it an additional amount of money for each character? Like just some kind of broad understanding so that people know how to then follow up with their second suggestion. Or are there characters that are off limits? If people get familiar with your work or you have examples of your work saying things like, and it should be something in my wheelhouse. Like no one should ever come to me and ask for me to draw Power Girl because neither one of us are going to be happy with the result of that commission. It's not going to look good. But if you want me to draw a Skeksis from the Dark Crystal or Hellboy or Usagi Yojimbo or a Guard Mouse or things like that, yeah, I can do that. We're both going to be happy with this.
I've had to become a lot more comfortable telling people no when it comes to stuff like that, and like realizing like I'm not going to have a good time drawing this. It's not going to be the best thing ever, and I'm not going to be happy giving it to you because I'm, it's just not going to be good work from me. So ask that guy over there. He'd probably have a good time drawing that. And it's hard because you're saying goodbye to like a few $100s sometimes, but it's just not worth it sometimes.
Write down, I guess, other advice about commission. Write down all the info you can about the person. Like I know this
number,
I collect the money up front.
I always collect the money up front.
Well, there are people who go, I don't collect the money up front because then if I don't get the piece done, it's a wash.
That's
And
me.
I
the
feel like I feel like you shouldn't take it on if you aren't sure that you can get it done.
I agree.
See,
But those people, the people who I know who do
Because
that, also
then the oh, sorry, go on.
they're upfront with the customer where they'll go,
Yeah.
I'm going to try my best to get it done.
Okay.
If I finish it, come by and it'll be this much.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I like let's just make the sale now. I'm committing myself to do it. I also don't want to draw it and then have you not show up and pay for it.
Yeah.
Where now what do I do? So I always collect the money up front.
Mm-hmm.
But also all the other info, name, email address, write down what is actually being commissioned.
Mm-hmm.
Don't rely on your memory.
Yeah.
20 minutes from now, you'll forget what the hell that person wanted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I definitely, I know myself well enough now that I still overestimate what I can do. So I do say, all right, let me take down what you want, your name, how I can reach you, and I will do these in the order that I get to them, and then I will email or I'll text you when it's done, when you can come pick it up, and then you can pay me then. And like if I do like a couple and they don't show up and don't pick it up, it's fine. But you know, it's just kind of the risk I take. I'd rather do that than like have somebody give me like $200 and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I couldn't do it, and let me mail it to you in like 3 months when I get to do it, because when I get back home, then I'm working on comic pages and commissions are much lower on my priority list compared to at conventions. So
I tend to overestimate how many I can do, but probably only by about 10% or so. And so while yes, when I get home, I should be working on other things. There's an element of like when I'm sitting in the hotel or sitting in the airport, I can work on one or two of them there. I can, you know, once I get home, if I only have one or two that I need to finish up and then we ship them out, it's actually a good way to kind of get back into the scope of regular work. But yeah, if you come home with like a list, that's bad. That's bad.
Yeah. Jackie, I like Jackie's comment. She's seen me sit at conventions and just do hundreds of little like post-it commissions.
Those little ones though, like that's my big advice. Now granted, different people have different levels of comfortability with how they draw, but like I cut a whole bunch of cardstock to half a sheet, like 8.5 by 5.5, and I try to draw about 4 by 6 on those. That gives me room to have some breathing space. But I will basically only draw small because one, I feel like I draw better small. And since I'm doing the watercolor stuff, it'll come on. But two, they tend to be faster and I can do them there. I can get a sense of things. I don't have to worry about it being at an angle so I can get everything right. But I like doing smaller stuff and letting people know that that's what's available. But
I've learned to do something similar. Like I'll come in with a pre-cut stack of like, I try to draw like 5 by 7 usually for that same reason. Like I can get stuff done a lot faster. I'm not being as precious about it as I would be on like an 11 by 17 sheet. And I can just, it is so much less stressful working at that size.
We'll do Dave's question and then potentially one more after this. So Dave asks, what are favorite convention snacks? I like, I usually have some beer back behind my table because it's liquid bread, beef jerky, Little Debbie oatmeal cream pies are great because you can just like a couple bites of it.
Liquid bread. Oh, you're the best.
Only Chris.
Those are mine.
I'm trying to.
I try to avoid nut-based snacks, like things with peanuts in them, because I don't know if anybody's going to have a peanut allergy and come up. I don't want to be breathing peanut butter on them if that's the case.
I think I'm kind of known for this now because people will bring me a lot of snacks at conventions and it's the best. I like chips mostly. I'll just like sit and eat like potato chips or Doritos all day, and people bring me weird flavors that they'll know I'll like. And so, I just eat chips like all weekend. It's terrible, but
I tend not to do too much snacking at the show usually. I'll either have breakfast before the show or I'll kind of bring breakfast in and be eating it while I'm doing any kind of table maintenance setup. and then I wait till lunch, and then I don't really do much until dinner. And usually lunch is inhaling whatever is going to be easy to inhale, whether that's a Subway sandwich or a slice of pizza or a hamburger. It's not the best diet. It's, but I try to eat better that night at dinner when we actually go, when we leave the convention center. Like, I know I'm kind of hostage at my table. I'm not going to get the best dietary stuff, but like, if I'm going to have a snack, it's going to be something like a Snickers bar. But I usually can last. Now I'll do drinks all the way through because you got to hydrate.
Yeah.
And we'll say this is our last question for the evening. James asked blank cover commissions at cons, yes or no. I've seen a few comic artists complaining about those. We complain about them because they're terrible to work on by and large.
It depends.
But
the problem is
the paper stock. But everybody likes drawing on the type of paper that they're used to drawing on.
Yeah.
Some of them are downright terrible. They have a sheen on them like a new car finish.
Those are the worst.
Unless you're using Posca markers, nothing's going to touch it. Yeah,
and I use watercolor, and it won't. There every once in a while it'll be fine on a cover, but it's rare. So
yeah.
But I'll draw on whatever somebody wants me to draw on. Some
of them are matte, and they're okay. The paper quality. My issue is if I start screwing, like if you start drawing and maybe you drew a little dark even in pencil and you want to like erase or whatever, you start screwing it up, you've now ruined somebody's blank cover. Yeah. If you've gotten a commission from me, whatever it is that I'm drawing on, I have a pad of it. So if I really screw up take number one, I can ball it up and throw it away and start over, and I'm out a sheet of paper. If I do that on your blank cover, you're out a blank cover comic, which I don't know, might be rare.
That's true. I enjoy getting them a lot, mostly just because it gives me an opportunity to draw characters I don't normally get to asked to draw. Like anytime I do get asked to draw a superhero, I'm super excited to do that because I never get to. And I'm like, yes, I'll draw Wonder Woman. Please let me do this. So yeah, I love getting them.
One more thing before going that I wanted to touch on is how do you all handle the aspect of being a salesperson? Like, is that something you consciously think about? Like, how much of that is you? How much of it is put on for the convention? I assume you know what I mean, but
so I'll touch on this a little bit. Like, I have discovered that if people come to my table, they know already that they like what I'm selling. Like I've got a big display. It's very easy to see what I have. I don't need to sell myself. I feel like my work, it sounds stupid. My work speaks for itself, but that's kind of the thing. Like, and anytime I'm going through a con and I go by those tables of guys that are like aggressively pushing their books or getting in your face about it, I run away. I very much avoid those tables. Like I can't stand that type of pushy salesmanship. If I walk by a table and I want to know more, I'll stop and I'll ask. But I have a very laid back attitude when it comes to selling. I'll answer questions, but I'm not like, oh, hey, I think you're cosplaying this character. You'll love this. Come over here. I hate that. I hate that so much.
Yeah. When I started doing Mouse Guard, I was actually working a full-time job at an antique store where I was hired as a salesperson. And I ended up morphing that job into being more of the graphic designer, advertising person, and website guru because I was not good at sales. A customer would come in and I would definitely welcome them. Welcome to the store. Is there anything that you're looking for in particular? And if they said, we're here to browse, I'd go, it was basically like, there's 3 floors. The stairs are back there and I'll be up here if you have any questions. And I'd sit back down at my desk and, do whatever the next part of my job was, but I would let them wander forever. And the owner of the store would be like, shouldn't you go check on them and just kind of try to find out, oh, what are you working on? What kind of a home are you working on? Are you doing any remodeling? And I was like, I can't do that. I was terrible at that. And it's partly because as a customer, I hate that. I hate going into Joann Fabrics and having them ask me, what kind of product are you working on? It's like, I don't really want to get into that.
None of your business. Yeah.
I'm not using this fabric to make the things you think I would make. I don't want to have to then explain all the answers of, oh, I'm making a fabric backdrop for my convention, Comic-Con convention bag. It's just let me buy the fabric. Just cut the fabric to the size and let me buy it. If I have questions, I'll ask you. And the same at like a Home Depot or wherever. Mm-hmm. And I hate when they kind of even let you browse, but still when they say, oh, I'll be right over here if you need me. And then they still just kind of follow and kind of watch because they're waiting for that moment where they think you're going to have a question, or they see you pick a product up and they'll go, oh, we're having a special 2 for 1 on those. I hate that. So like Cara, I'm there. I welcome them. I'll answer questions. I feel like the work is the thing. If they're interested in the work, they're interested in the work. If they have a question, I'm happy to answer it. But I'm not going to start suggesting answers because they pick up, like when they pick up a book, I'm not going to go, that's actually the beginning of the series, or you're picking up the second volume. Right now we're running a special, all 3 books for this amount. I wait until they say something.
Yeah.
I've got sort of like a methodology with mine. So like I tend to, I draw at the table because it gives me something to do where I do not have to make eye contact with the person when they first come up, because I feel like I want them to be initiating contact. Because I feel like that takes a lot of the pressure off of them. They can stop, they can pause, they can look at everything without feeling like I don't ever want anybody to feel rejected. So if I pass a table and somebody looks needy in the sense of they're like really waiting for interaction, I don't interact unless I'm positive that I'm buying something, because I don't want to put that person in a position where I look at their stuff and then leave. I feel like that makes them uncomfortable. I don't want anybody to be uncomfortable with me with that. So I draw at my table so that people can look. And then if somebody says something to me or mentions something, I'll usually acknowledge that I see them. I'll be like, hey, how you doing, or something. And I'll get back to drawing. And that lets them know that I'm not focused too heavily on the drawing to interact. Like I'm aware of them, I'm able to correspond, but I leave the ball in their court to ask a question or things like that. And that usually makes it to where it makes me present and available, but it makes it to where there is no obligation to talk. There's no obligation to interact. And I feel like the longer people are there, feel comfortable looking at my stuff, the more likely they are to buy something from it.
Oh yeah.
And I'm happy to talk about the work too. It's not like I want to be curt and only answer, with yes. Like when they ask a question, I'm going to answer with the shortest yes or no answer I can. I'm happy to chat about my work and to chat about what's available or answer questions. I can obviously keep going on if I need to. I know how to talk, but I wait for them to show the interest in getting the answer.
Yeah. I think, Chris, what you're doing is super smart, because looking like you aren't sitting there just waiting for somebody to stop. It's just such an awkward feeling, and to be occupied when people are at your table, but to be available to them at the same time, that's just really smart. I like that.
And y'all talking about walking around the shows and being like, well, this is what I don't want to do. Something, if you are able to occasionally go to a show that you're not tabling at and go as an attendee, it really shapes. It makes it to where you recognize and realize things that you might not have realized before, like how hard it is to walk around, how hard it is to carry things, like how, all the, little things that you might not think about if you're only sitting behind a table for 10 years straight. And so like occasionally like wandering around and getting a sense of things, like I think that can be helpful too. So like, interacting with other people at the show can help shape the way that you interact with your people at a show.
For
Yeah.
sure. And like, I see some of the comments are like, I never want people to walk away from my table feeling bad that they didn't buy something. Like, I'm never gonna feel offended if you don't buy something, and I don't want to make people feel that way. So I'm like, if somebody is like, oh, I'll come back later, I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, like, have fun, enjoy the con, like, you know, I'll be here if you need anything. Like, just be nice to people.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Well,
Like-
guys, thank you all so much for joining me this evening. It's good to see both of you. Hopefully, I'll see both of you in person before too long. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Thank you for your questions. For those who are watching this later, you know, feel free to leave comments if you have subsequent questions. If we'll see them, if I see them, I'll, you know, do my best to answer them. David, where can folks find you online?
I am at MouseGuard on Instagram and Twitter. You can go to mouseguard.net, which has links to my blog and my online store. And in just a few weeks, I'm going to be doing an event on my Twitch stream called Online Con, which is a 5-day, 40-hour long streaming event where I draw commissions and bring in 20 different guests. And we've got all kinds of people. We've got food people, we've got comic people, book illustrators, custom Lego piece manufacturers, all kinds of things. It's not just a comic convention, but I'm trying to take all my interests and make them available on my Twitch stream for you guys. When, you know, I started doing this when the pandemic started and we couldn't get to conventions, and I was like, if I was going to curate my own convention, what would that look like? So Online Con starts April 6th. It goes through April 10th, 2 to 10 p.m. All of those days on my Twitch stream, which is twitch.tv/ and then my name, and you have to spell it correctly the way it is here on the screen with all E's for the vowels in the last name.
Very nice. Sounds awesome.
Cara, oh, sorry, I didn't ask. I just thought, Cara, where can folks find you?
Yeah, I'm at Ocararara on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, everywhere. It's OHCARARARA. And then CARAMcGee.com is where you can find like all of my stuff. So yeah.
And I'm Schweitzer Comics on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram, but not frequently. I'm on Facebook, but mostly as a personal thingy. And then my website is schweitzercomics.com. So thank you guys, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.